Welcome to vibeSense.
So if you own a vehicle in India, you've probably seen those new E20 stickers popping up at the petrol pumps, right? We're hearing all this talk about how it's greener, better for the economy, and a huge help to our farmers. But then you talk to other drivers and you hear a different story. People are reporting lower mileage and they're getting worried about their engines. So what's the real deal? Is this new fuel a blessing or is it actually a burden in disguise? In this explainer, we're going to find out.
Make no mistake, this is a massive national debate, and it's got high stakes for your wallet, your vehicle, and frankly, the country's future. So here's what we're going to do. We'll break down what E20 even is, look at the government's big green promise, hear the concerns coming straight from the driver's seat, get to the heart of the great E20 debate, and finally, ask if this is really a bridge to the future.
Okay, so let's dive right in. First things first, what exactly is this stuff we're now putting in our tanks?
On the surface, E20 sounds pretty simple. It's a mix, 20% ethanol and 80% petrol. That ethanol part is a biofuel, which means it's made from crops like sugarcane and maize. The whole idea is that it helps the fuel burn a bit cleaner. But, and this is the catch, you really have to remember this part, ethanol has about 30% less energy packed into it than pure petrol. That little fact is going to be super important later on.
Right, so knowing that, you might be wondering, why is the government pushing to roll this out across the entire country by 2025? Well, it turns out they have some pretty ambitious goals in mind.
The government's whole case for E20 really stands on three big pillars. They want to reduce our reliance on foreign oil, give a major boost to farmer incomes, and of course, lower pollution from our vehicles. So let's take a look at the numbers they're using to back up these promises.
First up, energy security. And this number, wow, it's just staggering. India imports a massive 85% of its crude oil. That makes our entire economy incredibly vulnerable to whatever happens in global markets, from price hikes to political drama. The thinking is that by blending in ethanol that we make right here at home, we can start to cut down on that dangerous dependency.
And the potential savings? They're huge. The government is projecting that the E20 program could slash our annual import bill by $4 to $5 billion. You can imagine, that's a massive shot in the arm for the national economy.
Okay, next up, farmers. By creating this huge new demand for crops like sugarcane, the government aims to channel an extra 40,000 crore rupees to farmers every single year. The vision here is to transform farmers into urjadatas, or energy providers, creating a totally new and stable source of income for our rural economy.
And then, of course, there's the environmental argument, and this chart illustrates it pretty well. If you look at the entire life cycle, from planting the crop to actually burning the fuel in your car, studies show that ethanol made from sugarcane can cut emissions by up to 65%. That's a big deal, and it's a key piece of India's puzzle for hitting its climate goals.
So, the government's case, you have to admit, it sounds pretty convincing. But the story you hear on the ground, from the people who are actually using E20 every day, well, it's a very different picture. Let's pivot now and talk about that growing chorus of criticism.
This quote from social media is pretty powerful, and it really gets to the heart of the public's frustration. A lot of people feel like the benefits they were promised just aren't showing up. Instead of a smooth transition, there's this feeling of distrust growing around the whole rollout.
And look, this isn't just a few angry posts online. A major survey of 36,000 people found that a whopping 2/3 of drivers are actually against the E20 mandate. So why? What's driving all this backlash? Well, the number one complaint, by far, is the drop in mileage. Some people are reporting a hit of 20, even 30%. That's a huge hit to the wallet.
And a lot of this comes down to one crucial thing: vehicle compatibility. You see, cars made after 2023 are built to handle E20, but the vast majority of vehicles on our roads aren't. For those older cars, ethanol can be a real problem. It can actually absorb water, which leads to corrosion, and it can wear down rubber parts in the engine. We're talking about potentially very expensive repairs down the line.
And beyond all the technical issues, there's a really serious ethical question here: the whole food versus fuel debate. To hit these ethanol targets, India needs an incredible amount of sugarcane and maize. And so critics are asking a tough question. Should we really be using precious land and water to grow fuel for cars when we could be using it to grow food for people?
So, let's try to put this all together. What we have are two completely different stories, right? On one side, you have the government's promise of a stronger economy and a cleaner environment. And on the other, you have the public's very real worries about their money and their cars.
This table really lays out how the two sides stack up. The pro-E20 camp says it saves billions on imports, it lifts up our farmers, and it cuts emissions.
They'll point to countries like Brazil that have been doing this for years. But the anti-E20 camp fires right back, pointing to the mileage drop that hits consumers, the hidden costs of potential engine damage, the fact that sugarcane uses a ton of water, and that even biofuels have their own carbon footprint.
So who's right? Is it a boon or is it a burden? Well, like with most complicated things in life, the truth probably isn't on the extreme ends. Maybe the best way to think about E20 isn't as the final destination, but as just one step on a much, much longer journey.
The reality is, E20 is almost certainly a bridge technology. Think of it as an imperfect, temporary solution. It's designed to help India move away from its massive dependence on fossil fuels while we wait for cleaner technologies like EVs and hydrogen fuel cells to become cheap and common enough for everyone.
So when you boil it all down, what we're looking at is a policy of very clear trade-offs. In the short term, yeah, there are some real wins in energy security and farmer income. But in the medium term, consumers are the ones feeling the pain, with lower mileage and worries about their engines. And all of this is supposedly in service of that big, long-term goal, a complete switch to truly clean energy.
Which leaves us all with one final big question. Is India's huge bet on E20 a necessary, even if it's a bumpy bridge to a greener future, or is it a costly detour that's putting an unfair burden on drivers while maybe even creating new problems of its own? That's the debate we're all going to be a part of for years to come. Thanks for watching vibeSense.